Hello everyone, my name is Adonis Baguio, BS Ed 2C, major in science, and we are the group 9.
Lourdes P. Romero, BS Ed 2C, Group 9.
I'm Romalyn Equipaje, BS Ed Science, and we are the Group 9.
I'm Diomedes Orpiani Jr., BS Ed 2C.
Rose Ann R. Navarro, BSED 2C, English, and we are Group 9.
What is Indigenous people?
Indigenous Filipinos are among the many indigenous peoples, or IP, who have experienced devastating destructions of their homes, impositions of settlers in their ancestral domains, and retreats to areas far from basic social services. Approximately 110 ethnic tribes lives in the Philippines. With regard to education, the IP are among those with the lowest literacy rates. It is a challenge to serve their needs in remote areas, and standard education program fails to take into account their cultures, languages, and current realities. Disadvantage is the lack of quality education that does not align with their rights as indigenous peoples. Education that is well-resourced, culturally sensitive, aligned with their learning needs, languages, priorities, and aspirations, and delivered through culturally appropriate teaching strategies and in culturally appropriate settings. Threatens their existence, it found that indigenous people felt a lack of control over educational initiatives aimed at their children. Education policies and systems have often been used as means to assimilate indigenous peoples into broader society, at the risk of destroying their culture, languages, identity, and rights. Policies and curricula were rarely developed with indigenous peoples' participations or consent.
Actions leading to sustained improvements.
School leadership. Schools principals can make all the difference or not. Support for teachers. It may not be realistic for every teacher to meet indigenous students' need relating to language, culture, and identity, but there is much that can be done to help teachers to feel confident and competent in establishing positive relationship with their indigenous students. Early learning, providing high quality early childhood education and care, or ECEC, for indigenous children sets them on an early pathway for success. Extra support for students. There are many ways to provide extra support to individual students. Engaging families where respect, trust, and positive relationship have not always been part of historic or recent experience between indigenous communities and schools. Indigenous families are likely to be wary of engaging with school staff. Monitoring and reporting. Monitoring progress and having the data to do this helps educations, leaders, and stakeholders to see whether the package of initiative in the place has sufficient breadth and reach to shift overall students' outcomes.
We have seen 5 common elements in how sustained improvements in outcomes for indigenous students have been achieved in education. First is the relationships. A starting point of success lies in establishing respectful and trusting relationships with indigenous leaders and communities, both at a system governance level at an individual school level. Deliberate and specific intent. A common way to motivate and instigate action is to set targets for the level of improvements to be achieved within a given time frame. Next is the action on several fronts. Addressing deep, intergenerational, and systemic issues takes more than 1 or 2 initiatives or policy changes. Next is the affecting sufficient numbers of indigenous students. The effort made needs to be commensurate with the improvement goal and the size of the target population. Applying effort over a sustained period. Education systems that have not been designed to recognize and respond to the needs and context of indigenous students will take time to adjust. Next is the education that is well resourced, culturally sensitive, respectful of heritage, and that takes into account history. Cultural security and integrity encompasses human rights, community and individual development. Expert mechanism of indigenous people.
More explanations.
Indigenous people are usually found in the mountainous areas of the country where basic social services like public schools and health centers are non existent. Teaching in this setting is very different from that of a city. It takes 3 days to cover a single lesson. The problem lies in the curriculum. It dictates that this lesson should be finished on this day, but the students will not be able to understand the lesson in that short span of time. Aside from the problem in the curriculum, is the contact hours of the teachers with the students is shortened, considering the travel condition of the teachers. Being an indigenous people's teacher or IP teacher is twice harder. There is a standard number of contact hours that should be met because at the end of the day, it's not about the teachers, it's all about the learners. We are learner centered. Given the fact that not all of them are able to afford the opportunity to go to school, the struggle of attaining up to date knowledge remains hindered.